The sun was setting behind the hills when Amara walked home from school that Friday evening. Her bag was heavy with books, but her heart was light. She had just received her exam results, and once again, she had topped her class. Mathematics, her favorite subject, had earned her a perfect score. Her teacher had pulled her aside after class and told her something that made her smile for hours. "You have a gift, Amara. With grades like these, you could get a scholarship to the teacher training college in the city." A scholarship. The word danced in her mind as she walked along the dusty road. She imagined herself in a college uniform, sitting in lecture halls, learning how to inspire young minds just like her teachers had inspired her. She pictured herself returning to her village someday, standing in front of a classroom, helping other girls realize they could be anything they wanted to be. Her village was small, tucked away in a valley where mobile phone signals barely reached and electricity came and went as it pleased. Most girls her age had already dropped out of school. Some helped their mothers with farming. Others were already married, carrying babies on their backs while cooking for their husbands' families. But Amara's father had always been different. He had insisted she stay in school, even when neighbors whispered that educating girls was a waste of money. When she reached home, she noticed something unusual. Her father's old motorcycle was parked outside, which was strange because he should have been at his shop in the market. Through the window, she could see several pairs of shoes lined up by the door. They had guests. Her stomach tightened slightly. Unexpected visitors usually meant something important was happening. She pushed open the door and found her entire family gathered in their small living room. Her father sat in his usual chair, but his face looked different. Tired, maybe even sad. Her mother stood near the kitchen, wringing her hands in her sari. Her two younger brothers sat quietly in the corner, which was unusual because they were never quiet. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words. "Amara, come sit down," her father said softly. She placed her bag by the door and sat on the floor near her mother. Her heart was beating faster now. Something was definitely wrong. Her father cleared his throat. "You're 16 now, almost a woman, and I've made a decision about your future." Amara felt her mouth go dry. She didn't like the sound of this. "There's a man, a respected merchant from the next district. His name is Hassan. He's a good man, very wealthy, and he's asked for your hand in marriage. I've accepted his proposal." The words hit her like a bucket of cold water. Marriage? She looked at her mother, hoping this was some kind of joke. But her mother's eyes were fixed on the floor. Her brothers looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with their clothes. But father, I'm still in school. I got my results today. I came first again. My teacher said I could get a scholarship to... School is finished for you now." Her father interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "Hassan is a good match. Better than we could have hoped for. He's willing to pay a very generous bride price." "How old is he?" Amara's voice came out as barely a whisper. Her father hesitated. "Age doesn't matter when a man is respectable and can provide well." "How old, father?" "He's 62. The room started spinning. 62. That was older than her father. That was grandfather age. She looked at her mother again, silently begging her to say something to stop this madness. But her mother remained silent, tears quietly rolling down her cheeks. "I don't want to get married," Amara said, her voice stronger now. "I want to finish school. I want to become a teacher. You always said education was important. You always said I could..." "Things have changed." Her father's voice cracked slightly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. They looked like bills, notices, documents with red stamps on them. "We're in debt, Amara, serious debt. Your uncle needed money for his medical treatment 2 years ago, and I borrowed from moneylenders. Then the rains failed and our crops. The interest keeps growing. They're threatening to take our land, our house, everything." Amara felt tears burning her eyes. "There has to be another way. I can work. Hassan's bride price will clear all our debts and leave enough to secure your brother's futures. He's agreed to pay everything, in cash, immediately after the wedding. So you're selling me?" The words came out harsher than she intended, but she didn't care anymore. Her father's face hardened. "Watch your tongue. This is not selling. This is family responsibility. This is what daughters do. They make sacrifices for their families. Hassan is offering us a way out of ruin. Do you want your brothers to lose their chance at education? Do you want us to become homeless?" "But what about my chance? What about my dreams? Dreams don't feed families, her father said flatly. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Hassan wants it done quickly, and frankly, so do I. The moneylenders are getting impatient. 3 weeks. 21 days. Amara felt like she couldn't breathe. She looked around the room desperately. Her mother was crying openly now. Her brothers looked guilty and scared. Nobody was going to help her. Nobody was going to save her. Please, Father, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please don't do this. I'll work. I'll find a way to help with the money. Just let me finish school, please. Her father stood up and she could see his eyes were wet too, but his jaw was set. The decision is made. Hassan is coming to meet you next week. Your mother will teach you what you need to know about being a wife. I suggest you prepare yourself mentally. This is happening, Amara. For all of us. He walked out of the room and she heard the front door close. The sound of his motorcycle starting up faded into the distance. Her mother came and sat beside her, pulling her into an embrace. I'm sorry, Beta, her mother whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, but we have no choice. This is how it is for girls like us. We bear these burdens so our families can survive. But Amara wasn't listening anymore. She was thinking about the scholarship her teacher had mentioned. She was thinking about the classroom she would never stand in. She was thinking about the books she would never read and the students she would never teach. She was thinking about a 62-year-old stranger who would become her husband in 3 weeks. That night, she lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Through the thin walls, she could hear her mother crying softly in the next room. Outside, the night insects sang their usual songs, oblivious to the fact that her entire world had just collapsed. She pulled out her exam results from her bag and looked at them in the moonlight coming through her window. First rank, perfect score in mathematics. Her teacher's handwritten note at the bottom, exceptional work. You have a bright future ahead. A bright future. The words seemed like a cruel joke now. In 3 weeks, she would be married to a man old enough to be her grandfather. Her education would end. Her dreams would die. And all of it because of money, because of debt, because of a system that saw girls as solutions to family problems rather than human beings with their own hopes and ambitions. Amara folded the paper carefully and tucked it under her pillow. Then she turned her face to the wall and cried until sleep finally came. The 3 weeks passed like a nightmare Amara couldn't wake up from. Each morning she hoped she would open her eyes and find it had all been a bad dream. But every morning brought her 1 day closer to the wedding, 1 day closer to the end of everything she had known. Hassan had visited twice during those weeks. The first time, Amara had refused to come out of her room. She heard his voice in the living room, deep and raspy from years of smoking. She heard him laugh at something her father said, a wheezy sound that made her skin crawl. Her mother had pleaded with her through the door, but Amara had stayed locked inside until he left. The second visit, her father had physically dragged her out. Hassan sat on their best chair, the one they usually saved for important guests. He wore expensive clothes and had gold rings on his fingers. His beard was dyed black, but his hands were spotted with age. When he smiled at her, she saw he was missing several teeth. He had looked at her the way someone looks at a purchase they're satisfied with, nodding approvingly. She's very pretty, he had told her father as if she wasn't standing right there. Fair skin? Good height. She'll give me strong sons. Amara had felt sick to her stomach. She had run back to her room and vomited. That night she had tried to run away. She had packed a small bag and waited until everyone was asleep. But her father had anticipated this. He had locked all the doors and windows from outside. She was a prisoner in her own home. Now it was the wedding day. Amara sat still as her aunts and cousins fussed around her. They had been working on her since dawn, applying makeup, draping her in a heavy red bridal outfit that Hassan had sent. The jewelry was real gold, heavy and cold against her skin. Someone was painting intricate designs on her hands with henna. Someone else was fixing flowers in her hair. Such a lucky girl, one aunt kept saying. Married to such a wealthy man. You'll live in luxury. Another aunt chimed in. Your children will never know poverty. You're saving your entire family. They talked about her, around her, but never to her. Nobody seemed to notice or care that she hadn't spoken a single word all morning. Nobody seemed to see the tears that kept rolling down her cheeks, ruining the makeup that they immediately reapplied. Her mother came into the room, dressed in her best sari. For a moment their eyes met. Her mother opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. What was there to say? They both knew this was wrong. They both knew Amara was being sacrificed. But what could one woman do against tradition, against debt, against a decision that had already been made? The wedding ceremony was held in the community hall. Hassan had paid for everything, and he wanted everyone in both villages to see his generosity. There were flowers everywhere, hired musicians playing traditional songs, and tables full of food that most of the guests had probably never seen in their lives. Amara was led to the stage like a doll. She could barely see through the heavy veil they had placed over her face. Hassan sat beside her on the decorated platform. She could smell him, a mixture of expensive perfume trying to cover the smell of old age and tobacco. She kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, refusing to look at him. The religious officiant began the ceremony. He recited prayers and verses. He talked about the sanctity of marriage, about duty and devotion. He asked Hassan if he accepted Amara as his wife. Hassan's voice was clear and confident as he said yes. Then the officiant turned to Amara. "Do you accept Hassan as your husband?" The hall fell silent. Everyone was waiting. Amara's throat felt like it was closing up. She wanted to scream no. She wanted to tear off this suffocating outfit and run as far as her legs could carry her. She wanted to ask why nobody cared that she was 16 and terrified and didn't want any of this. She felt her father's hand on her shoulder squeezing hard, a warning, a threat. A reminder of the debt, the shame, the consequences if she refused now in front of all these people. "Yes," she whispered, so softly that the officiant had to ask her to repeat it. "Yes," she said again, louder this time, and the word felt like a betrayal of herself. The hall erupted in celebration. Guests cheered. Musicians played louder. Someone started distributing sweets. Hassan turned to her and lifted her veil slightly. His face was close to hers, his breath hot on her skin. He smiled, satisfied. The rest of the evening was a blur of faces and noise. People she didn't know came to congratulate her. Women told her what a blessed bride she was. Men clapped Hassan on the back and made jokes she didn't understand, but that made everyone laugh. She sat through it all like a statue, her face painted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When it was finally time to leave, her mother hugged her tightly. "Be obedient," she whispered. "Don't make him angry, just survive." It was the only honest thing anyone had said to her all day. Her brothers hugged her awkwardly, not meeting her eyes. Her father kissed her forehead and she saw relief on his face. Relief that the debt was cleared, that his sons' futures were secure. She wanted to hate him, but all she felt was emptiness. Hassan's car was decorated with flowers and ribbons. She was helped into the back seat, her heavy outfit making it difficult to move. Hassan got in beside her. As the car started moving, taking her away from her village, from her school, from everything familiar, Amara looked back through the rear window. She saw her family standing outside the hall, growing smaller and smaller. She wondered if she would ever see them again. The drive to Hassan's town took 2 hours. He tried to talk to her at first, telling her about his house, his businesses, how comfortable her life would be. When she didn't respond, he gave up and made phone calls instead, discussing business deals in a loud voice. When they finally arrived, it was late evening. Hassan's house was indeed large, surrounded by high walls. Inside the compound, there were several buildings. He pointed out which was the main house, which were for servants, which was for storage. Everything was concrete and practical, with no warmth anywhere. He led her to the main house, to a bedroom that would now be hers, or rather theirs. The room was large but felt cold despite the expensive furniture and decorations. There was a big bed in the center, and the sight of it made Amara's heart race with panic. "I'll give you some time to change and freshen up," Hassan said, gesturing to a bathroom. "There are clothes in the closet. I'll be back in an hour." After he left, Amara stood in the middle of that room, still wearing her heavy bridal outfit. She looked around at her new prison. The windows had decorative bars on them. The door had no lock on the inside. This was her life now. This room, this house, this old man who owned her. She walked slowly to the bathroom and caught sight of herself in the mirror. The bride looking back at her was painted and decorated like a doll. But her eyes were dead. Somewhere between her home and here, somewhere between yes and this moment, the girl who had dreamed of becoming a teacher had ceased to exist. Amara locked herself in the bathroom. She sat on the cold tile floor, pulled her knees to her chest, and cried as quietly as she could. Outside, she could hear Hassan moving around, making phone calls, humming to himself. He sounded happy. Why wouldn't he be? He had gotten exactly what he paid for. The first few weeks in Hassan's house felt like living underwater. Everything was muffled, distant, unreal. Amara moved through her days like a ghost, doing what was expected of her but feeling nothing. She had learned quickly what Hassan wanted from a wife. Cook his meals exactly how he liked them. Keep the house spotless. Stay quiet unless spoken to. Never question. Never complain. Never show any sign of the anger and sadness churning inside her. Hassan's routine was predictable. He woke up early, expected his tea at exactly 6 in the morning, strong and sweet with cardamom. He would read the newspaper while she prepared breakfast. Then he would leave for his shop in the market, sometimes returning for lunch, sometimes not. Evenings were the worst. He would come home, eat dinner, watch television, and expect her to sit beside him like a good wife. At night, she would lie awake long after he fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, remembering who she used to be. The compound had servants, but Hassan had made it clear that Amara was expected to do the main household work herself. I didn't marry you to sit around like a queen, he had said. A wife should know how to run a home. The servants were kind to her in their own way, but they kept their distance. She was the master's wife, and there was an unbridgeable gap between them. What hurt most was the isolation. Hassan had taken her phone on the 3rd day, saying she didn't need it. Who would you call anyway? He had asked. Your family is taken care of now. You have everything you need here. She had no way to contact her mother, her brothers, her old friends from school. She wondered if they thought about her. She wondered if they even missed her. She wasn't allowed to leave the compound without Hassan. He had made this rule clear from the beginning. The streets aren't safe for women alone, he said. Besides, you have no reason to go anywhere. If you need something, tell me and I'll get it. But it wasn't about safety. It was about control. She could see it in the way he always knew where she was, in the way the servants reported her movements to him, in the way the compound walls seemed to grow higher every day. Sometimes when Hassan was at work, Amara would stand at the gate and watch people walk by on the street outside, women going to the market with their shopping bags, students in uniforms heading to school, normal people living normal lives. She would imagine herself walking out that gate, just walking and walking until she was somewhere far away. But the gate was always locked, and the guard Hassan had hired was always watching. The compound was large, but it felt tiny. She knew every corner, every tree, every crack in the pavement. There was a small garden area that nobody really maintained anymore. Sometimes she would sit there among the overgrown plants, finding a strange comfort in the wildness of it. At least something in this place wasn't perfectly controlled. Hassan's adult children came to visit occasionally, and these visits made everything worse. His oldest son was 43, managing one of Hassan's businesses in another city. His daughter lived 3 towns away and came once a month. Both of them treated Amara with a mixture of awkwardness and thinly veiled resentment. She was younger than both of them. She was young enough to be Hassan's granddaughter. The first time the son visited, he could barely look at her. Over dinner, he kept glancing at his father with an expression Amara couldn't quite read. Disapproval? Embarrassment? Later, she heard them arguing in Hassan's study. The walls were thin enough that she caught bits of their conversation. Father, she's just a child. What were you thinking? Mind your own business. I can marry whoever I want. She's my wife, legally and properly. But the age difference, people are talking. It's not right. People always talk, let them. I've lived my whole life according to what people thought was right. I'm old now. I wanted a young wife. I can afford one. End of discussion. The son had left angry and Hassan had been in a foul mood for days after. He took it out on Amara in small ways, criticizing her cooking more than usual, finding fault with how she had cleaned, reminding her that she should be grateful for the life he had given her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Amara's 16th birthday came and went without acknowledgement. Nobody knew. Nobody cared. In her old life, her mother would have made her favorite sweet dish. Her brothers would have teased her about being old. At school, her friends would have shared their lunch with her in celebration. Now it was just another day of cooking and cleaning and trying to become invisible. She thought about her school books often. They were probably collecting dust in her old room, or maybe her brothers were using them now. She thought about her mathematics teacher, who had believed in her, who had talked about scholarships and possibilities. She wondered what she would think if she knew where Amara had ended up. Would she be disappointed? Would she even remember her? Sometimes late at night when Hassan was snoring beside her, Amara would do mathematics problems in her head. She would recall formulas and theorems, working through complex calculations as a way to prove to herself that her brain still worked, that some part of her old self still existed. It was her secret rebellion, invisible and silent, but hers alone. The worst part wasn't the work or even the loneliness. It was the feeling that she was slowly disappearing. Every day she felt a little less like Amara and a little more like Hassan's wife. She caught herself sometimes, moving through the house with the same tired expression she had seen on older women in her village. Women who had given up fighting. Women who had accepted their fate. She was becoming one of them, and she was only 16. Hassan never asked about her past, her dreams, or her thoughts. To him, her life had begun the day she became his wife. Everything before that was irrelevant. When he talked, it was always about his business, his money, his properties, his achievements. She was expected to listen and nod. Her opinions were neither sought nor welcomed. The house had a television, but Hassan controlled what they watched. The house had books, but they were all religious texts or business journals. Nothing that might inspire dangerous thoughts. Nothing that might remind her of the education she had lost. Once she found an old newspaper and saw an article about the new batch of students at the teacher training college. She had stared at that article for so long that the print became blurry. These could have been her classmates. This could have been her life. Food lost its taste. Sleep brought no rest. The sun rose and set, but the days all felt the same. Wake up. Make tea, cook, clean, wait, repeat. This was her life now. This was all it would ever be. And the terrifying part was that she was getting used to it. The anger that had burned so bright in those first weeks was fading into a dull acceptance. She was adapting to her cage. Some nights she would dream about her classroom. She would be standing in front of students, teaching them about equations and geometry. She would wake up with tears on her face, the dream dissolving like smoke, leaving her in the dark bedroom with Hassan's heavy breathing beside her. 3 months into the marriage, Amara realized she couldn't remember the last time she had laughed. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt anything besides numbness. She looked at herself in the mirror one morning and barely recognized the girl staring back. Her eyes looked older. Her face looked tired. The bright spark that used to shine in her eyes had gone out. She was alive, but she wasn't living. She was breathing, but she had forgotten how to hope. And the most frightening thing was that she was starting to believe this was normal, that this was just how life was supposed to be for girls like her. That dreams were for other people, people who were lucky enough to be born into different circumstances. The compound walls cast long shadows in the afternoon sun. Amara stood in her usual spot by the gate watching the world move by without her. Somewhere out there, her former classmates were still in school, still learning, still growing, and here she was, trapped in a life that felt like it belonged to someone else, slowly forgetting who she used to be. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 4 months into Amara's marriage, when everything began to shift. She was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she heard a car pull up outside. Visitors weren't unusual, but something about the voice that called out made her pause. It was a woman's voice, confident and clear. "Is anyone home? Father, where are you?" Amara peeked through the kitchen doorway. A woman in her late 20s stood in the courtyard, pulling off her sunglasses. She wore modern clothes, jeans, and a bright kurta, and carried a leather bag over her shoulder. Her hair was cut short, which was unusual for women in this area. Everything about her suggested someone who lived life on her own terms. Hassan emerged from his study looking surprised. "Zara, I didn't know you were coming. I called you 3 times. You never answer your phone." The woman, Zara, hugged him briefly. "I had some work in town, so I thought I'd stop by. Where's this new wife everyone's been talking about?" Amara's stomach tightened. She had heard about Zara, Hassan's youngest daughter from his second marriage. She lived in the capital city and rarely visited. Hassan's other children had mentioned her with a mixture of respect and disapproval. She had refused an arranged marriage, gotten a university degree, and worked for some organization that Hassan didn't like to talk about. "Amara," Hassan called out. "Come here." Amara wiped her hands on her dupatta and walked into the courtyard, keeping her eyes down as Hassan expected. But she felt Zara's gaze on her, studying her carefully. There was a long silence. Then Zara spoke, her voice different now, tighter. "Father, how old is she?" "That's none of your concern. Hassan said dismissively. She's my wife. We're legally married. How old is she? 16. Almost 17 now. Another silence, this one heavier. When Amara dared to glance up, she saw Zara's face had gone pale. You married a child. A girl younger than your own granddaughter. Watch your tone, Zara. This is my house, and I'll do as I please in it. Your house, Zara repeated quietly. Then she turned to Amara. What's your name? Amara, she whispered. It's nice to meet you, Amara. I'm Zara. She said it like Amara was a person worth greeting properly, not just Hassan's property. It was such a small thing, but it made something crack inside Amara's chest. Hassan interrupted. Zara, if you've just come to lecture me about my choices, you can leave. I don't need your modern ideas in my house. Zara's jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. I'm not here to argue. I just wanted to visit. May I stay for lunch? Hassan looked suspicious but nodded. Fine. Amara, serve lunch. During the meal, Hassan dominated the conversation, talking about his businesses and complaining about various people who had wronged him. Zara responded politely but kept glancing at Amara, who sat silently eating small bites of rice. Every time their eyes met, Zara's expression grew more troubled. After lunch, Hassan received a phone call about some urgent business matter. He excused himself, going to his study and closing the door. The moment he was gone, Zara turned to Amara. How long have you been married? 4 months. Were you in school before? Amara nodded, not trusting her voice. What grade? I was in 10th grade. I wanted to become a teacher. Zara closed her eyes briefly as if in pain. Did you want to marry my father? The question was so direct, so honest, that Amara didn't know how to respond. She had spent 4 months pretending this was normal, acceptable, something she had chosen. Nobody had asked her this question. Not once. No, she whispered finally. But my family needed money. So they sold you to him. The words hung in the air, sold, that's exactly what had happened. But nobody had said it out loud until now. Amara felt tears building but fought them back. Zara leaned forward. Listen to me, Amara, what's happening to you is not okay. I don't care that it's traditional or that the papers are signed. You're a child. You should be in school, not trapped in this house as my father's wife. There's nothing I can do, Amara said quietly. It's done. I'm married now. There are ways out. Organizations that help women in situations like yours. Lawyers who fight these cases. And who would help me? My own family won't. They got what they wanted from this marriage. And Hassan? She glanced nervously at the closed study door. I know my father, Zara said. I know what he's like. Controlling. Inflexible. He thinks money can buy anything, including people. She pulled out a card from her purse and pressed it into Amara's hand. This is my number. And this? She pulled out another card. Is the number for the women's organization I work with. We help girls in difficult situations. Amara stared at the cards like they were dangerous. He took my phone. I can't call anyone. Zara's expression hardened. Of course he did. Okay, I'll come back. I'll visit regularly. Can you read and write? Yes. Good. I'll bring you things. Books, maybe. Would he allow that? I don't know. Maybe if they're not school books, we'll figure something out. Zara's voice was urgent now, intense. Amara, listen to me. You are not alone. I know it feels like you are, but you're not. What's happening to you is wrong, and there are people who want to help. You just have to be patient and trust me. Can you do that? Before Amara could answer, they heard Hassan's footsteps. Amara quickly hid the cards in her dupatta as Hassan entered the room. Still here, Zara? Just leaving, father. She stood up, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Actually, I was thinking I should visit more often. Check on you. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Hassan looked surprised but pleased. Well, that would be nice. You haven't been a good daughter about visiting. I'll do better, Zara said. At the door, she turned back and looked directly at Amara. It was nice meeting you, Amara. I'll see you again soon. After Zara left, Hassan was in an unusually good mood. See? Even Zara is finally growing up, becoming more respectful. Maybe she'll settle down soon, find a proper husband. Amara nodded silently, but her hand was clenched around the cards hidden in her clothes. For the first time in 4 months, a tiny spark of something flickered inside her. Not quite hope, not yet, but something. Someone had seen her. Someone had acknowledged that this was wrong. Someone had offered help. That night, after Hassan fell asleep, Amara carefully took out the cards and hid them inside her pillowcase. She ran her fingers over the printed numbers, memorizing them just in case. She didn't know if she would ever be brave enough to use them. She didn't know if anything could actually change. But for the first time since her wedding day, she felt like maybe, possibly she wasn't completely alone. Zara came back a week later, and then again the week after that. Each visit she brought something small. A book of poetry. A magazine. Once a small notebook and a pen saying, "I thought you might like to write." It helped sometimes, putting thoughts on paper. Hassan seemed pleased by his daughter's newfound attention, not realizing that every visit, every gift, was slowly building a bridge between Amara and the outside world. Each time Zara visited, they would find a few minutes alone. Zara would ask careful questions. How was she being treated? Was she okay? Did she have enough to eat? Was Hassan hurting her? And slowly, carefully, Zara began to tell Amara stories. Stories about other women who had escaped difficult situations. Stories about laws that protected children. Stories about shelters and lawyers and second chances. She never pushed. She never demanded that Amara make any decisions. She just planted seeds one visit at a time. "You don't have to live like this forever," Zara said during one visit, her voice low and urgent. "This isn't your only option. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, there are people who will help. I will help." Amara didn't respond, but she held on to those words like a lifeline. In the darkness of her gilded cage, they were a small light. Not enough to see the full path ahead, but enough to remind her that somewhere beyond these walls, there was still a world where 16-year-old girls could dream of becoming teachers, where they could choose their own futures, where they were more than just solutions to their family's financial problems. She wasn't ready yet. She was still too scared, too beaten down, too convinced that this was her fate. But the seed had been planted, and slowly, very slowly, it was beginning to grow. 6 months into the marriage, Hassan's health began to decline. It started with a persistent cough that wouldn't go away, then chest pains that sent him to the doctor multiple times. The doctor prescribed medications and warned him about his smoking, his diet, and his stress levels. Hassan ignored most of the advice, but his mood grew increasingly volatile. When Hassan felt unwell, everyone around him suffered. The servants learned to stay out of his way. His business partners received angry phone calls over minor issues, and Amara became the closest target for his frustration. "This tea is too sweet. Can't you do anything right? The house is dusty. What do you do all day? You're useless. I've given you everything and you can't even manage simple household tasks." The criticism was constant, exhausting. Amara tried harder, waking up earlier, staying up later, but nothing was ever good enough. Hassan's expectations were impossible to meet, and she realized that he didn't actually want her to succeed. He wanted someone to blame for his own unhappiness. Zara continued her visits, now coming twice a week. She had told Hassan it was because she was worried about his health, and he seemed to appreciate the attention. But really, she was checking on Amara, watching the light fade from her eyes with each passing week. "You look thinner," Zara observed during one visit when Hassan was napping. "Are you eating enough?" "I eat after Hassan finishes," Amara explained. "Sometimes there's not much left, but it's okay." "It's not okay. None of this is okay." Zara's frustration was visible. "Amara, you can't keep living like this. It's destroying you. I can see it. What choice do I have?" Amara's voice was flat, defeated. "This is my life now. It doesn't have to be. The organization I work with has lawyers. We've helped girls in worse situations than yours. And then what? Where would I go? My family won't take me back. They'll say I brought shame on them. The whole village will talk. There are places, safe houses. We can help you get back into school, help you build a new life." Amara shook her head. "You don't understand. Girls like me don't get second chances. Once you're married, that's it. Running away would only make everything worse." Zara looked like she wanted to argue more, but Hassan's voice called from the bedroom. "Amara, where's my medicine?" "I have to go," Amara said, standing up quickly. "Just think about it," Zara urged. "Please, at least keep the idea in your mind. You deserve better than this." But Amara had stopped believing she deserved anything. She had been told so many times that she should be grateful, that she was lucky, that she had no right to complain. The voice in her head had started to sound like Hassan's, like her father's, like all the people who had convinced her that her suffering was normal. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Hassan had been particularly irritable all day, his cough worse than usual. Amara had spent hours preparing his favorite meal, making sure everything was perfect. She served him lunch, hoping it might improve his mood. He took one bite and spat it out. "What is this garbage? Did you forget how to cook?" "It's the same recipe I always use," Amara said quietly. "The one you said you liked. Don't talk back to me." His voice rose sharply. "I'm telling you it tastes terrible, and instead of apologizing, you're arguing with me." "I'm not arguing. You just nothing." He slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. "You're a terrible wife, lazy, incompetent. I paid good money for you, and this is what I get? A girl who can't even cook a decent meal." Something in those words hit differently. Paid good money for you. Like she was a purchase. Like she was an object he had bought and found defective. 6 months of suppressed anger suddenly surged up inside her. "I am not your purchase," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm a human being." Hassan's face turned red. "How dare you speak to me like that? I am your husband. You owe me respect, obedience." "I owe you nothing." The words burst out of her, months of silence breaking like a dam. "You took away my education. You trapped me in this house. You treat me like a servant, like property. I was 16 years old. I should have been in school, not married to someone older than my grandfather." Hassan stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You ungrateful girl. After everything I've done for your family, I saved them from ruin, and this is how you repay me? I didn't ask you to save anyone. I had dreams. I wanted to be a teacher. You took my whole life away." "Your life?" Hassan's laugh was cruel. "You had nothing. Your family was drowning in debt. You were nobody. I gave you value. I gave you purpose. My purpose is not to serve you." Amara was crying now, years of pain pouring out. "I had value before you. I was smart. I was first in my class. I had a future." Hassan moved toward her, his face twisted with anger. "You will show me respect in my own house. This isn't a home. It's a prison." Amara backed away from him. "And you're not a husband. You're a jailer, a cruel old man who bought a child because no woman his own age would want him." The slap came so fast she didn't see it coming. The force of it knocked her sideways and she fell against the counter. Her cheek exploded with pain and she tasted blood in her mouth. For a moment there was complete silence. Hassan stood over her, breathing hard. "Don't you ever speak to me like that again." Then he turned and walked away, leaving her collapsed on the kitchen floor. She heard his bedroom door slam, heard the lock turn. The house was utterly silent except for her own ragged breathing. Amara pulled herself up slowly, every part of her shaking. She made it to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Her cheek was already swelling, a red mark spreading across her face. But what frightened her more than the physical pain was the look in her own eyes. They were empty, broken. She slid down to sit on the cold tile floor, pulling her knees to her chest. And then something inside her just collapsed. All the strength she had used to survive the past 6 months, all the effort she had put into adapting and enduring, suddenly evaporated. She cried like she had never cried before, her whole body shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. She cried for the girl she used to be, the one who loved mathematics and dreamed of teaching. She cried for her stolen education, her lost friends, her abandoned hopes. She cried for the childhood that had been ripped away and the future that would never exist. She cried until she had no tears left, until she was just gasping for air, her throat raw and her eyes swollen. Hours passed. The sun set outside the small bathroom window. The house was quiet. Hassan didn't come to check on her. Nobody did. She was completely alone with her pain. Finally, as darkness filled the bathroom, Amara heard her phone ringing in the distance. No, not her phone. She didn't have one anymore. It was the house phone. It rang and rang, then stopped, then started again. On the third attempt, she heard Hassan answer it, his voice gruff. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the bathroom door. Not Hassan's knock, softer. "Amara, it's Zara. Your husband called me. He said you're upset. Can you open the door?" Amara didn't move, didn't respond. "Amara, please. I'm worried about you. Let me see you." Slowly, Amara reached up and unlocked the door. It opened and Zara was there, concern written all over her face. Then she saw Amara's swollen cheek, the tear-streaked face, the absolute devastation in her eyes. "Oh, Amara," Zara whispered, kneeling beside her. "Oh no, what did he do?" And Amara, who had been holding everything together for so long, who had been trying so hard to survive, finally broke. She fell into Zara's arms and let herself completely fall apart. "I can't do this anymore," she sobbed. "I can't. I want my life back. I want to go to school. I want to be me again. Please help me. Please, I can't live like this anymore." Zara held her tightly and Amara felt her nodding. "Okay," Zara said firmly. "Okay, we're going to get you out of here. I promise you, Amara, this ends now." That night, Zara stayed at the house, insisting that Hassan needed family support given his health issues. He was too proud to admit he wanted her there, but he didn't refuse. Zara took the guest room, and for the first time in months, Amara felt like someone was on her side. Someone was watching over her. The next morning, while Hassan was still sleeping, Zara came to the kitchen where Amara was making tea. She kept her voice low and urgent. "I made some calls last night. The organization I work with is ready to help. They have a shelter in the city, 3 hours from here. They'll take you in, provide protection, legal support, everything you need." Amara's hands trembled as she poured the tea. "How would I even get there?" "We'll plan it carefully. When Hassan leaves for one of his business trips, I'll come with a taxi. You'll pack a small bag, just essentials. Nothing that would make him suspicious if he saw it. We'll drive straight to the shelter. And then what?" Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "He'll come looking for me. My family will be furious. Everyone will say I ran away, that I'm a bad wife, that I brought shame." "Let them say whatever they want," Zara interrupted firmly. "Amara, you're 17 years old. You should be worried about homework and friends, not whether your elderly husband is going to hit you again. This marriage is wrong. It was always wrong. And we're going to fix it. What if it doesn't work? What if I have to come back?" "You won't, I promise you. The lawyers at this organization are very good. They've won cases like this before. But you have to be brave. Can you do that?" Amara thought about her swollen cheek, about 6 months of being treated like property, about the dreams she had buried. "When?" "Hassan has a business trip to the capital next Tuesday. I heard him mention it on the phone. 4 days from now. Can you wait that long? 4 days, 96 hours. It seemed impossibly long and terrifyingly short at the same time. What should I pack? Just clothes. Any documents you can find, identification, anything with your name on it. Don't pack too much or he might notice something missing. And Amara, you can't tell anyone. Not the servants, not your family, nobody. Can you keep this secret?" Amara nodded, her heart pounding. For the first time in months, she felt something other than despair. It was fear, yes, but it was also something else. Hope. Tiny and fragile, but real. The next 4 days were the longest of Amara's life. She moved through her routine as normal, trying not to let Hassan suspect anything had changed. She cooked his meals, cleaned the house, and spoke as little as possible. Every night, she would check the small bag she had hidden under the bed, making sure everything was ready. She had found her school completion certificate in Hassan's study, tucked away in a file cabinet with other documents. Seeing it brought tears to her eyes. There she was in the photo, smiling, innocent, full of dreams. That girl seemed like a stranger now. But maybe, just maybe, she could find her way back to being her. Hassan's mood improved slightly after Zara's visit. Though he never apologized for hitting Amara, he seemed to consider the matter closed, his dominance reasserted. He didn't notice that Amara had become even quieter than usual, that she jumped at sudden sounds, that her eyes followed him with a mixture of fear and calculation. Monday night, Hassan packed his bags for his trip. "I'll be gone for 2 days, maybe 3. I expect the house to be spotless when I return. And Amara," he looked at her directly, "no sulking. Your behavior last week was unacceptable. I better see improvement." "Yes," she said quietly, eyes down. "Good. I leave early tomorrow. Have my breakfast ready at 5. That night, Amara barely slept. She lay in the dark, listening to Hassan's heavy breathing, counting down the hours. At 4:30, she got up and prepared his breakfast. He ate quickly, gave her a list of instructions for things to do while he was gone, and finally, mercifully, left. She watched from the window as his car disappeared down the road. Then she stood there for another 10 minutes, making sure he didn't come back for something he'd forgotten. The house was silent. The servants hadn't arrived yet. She was alone. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her hidden bag and did a final check. Clothes, documents, The few pieces of jewelry her mother had given her at the wedding. The small notebook Zara had gifted her, where she had been secretly writing her thoughts. That was all. Everything else in this house could stay behind. At exactly 8 o'clock, she heard a car horn outside. Her heart leaped into her throat. She ran to the gate and saw Zara in a taxi, waving at her. The guard looked confused. "The madam needs to go to the clinic," Zara called out to him. "Women's issues. My father asked me to take her." The guard nodded and opened the gate. Just like that. It was almost too easy. Amara walked through that gate for the first time in 6 months. Each step felt surreal, like she was floating. She got into the taxi, clutching her small bag. Zara told the driver to go and the car started moving. "Wait," Amara suddenly said, panic rising. "What if he calls the house? What if someone tells him? I've told the guard that we'll be back this afternoon. By the time Hassan realizes you're gone, you'll be safe in the shelter. The organization has lawyers ready. They'll handle everything." As the taxi picked up speed, taking her away from Hassan's compound, away from that prison, Amara felt something break loose in her chest. She looked back through the rear window, watching the compound grow smaller and smaller. The high walls that had trapped her. The gate that was always locked. The house where she had lost herself. "I'm really leaving," she whispered. "I'm actually leaving." Zara squeezed her hand. "You're free, Amara, or you will be. This is just the beginning." The 3-hour drive passed in a blur. Amara stared out the window, watching the landscape change. Villages gave way to small towns, then larger towns. She saw schools with children in uniforms playing in courtyards. She saw women walking freely on streets, shopping, laughing, living their lives. The world was so much bigger than the 4 walls she had been trapped in. Halfway through the journey, Amara's phone, the one Hassan had taken, started ringing from where Zara had it in her bag. They looked at each other. "It's him," Zara said, checking the screen. "Already. Someone must have told him. What do we do?" "Nothing. We keep driving." "You're not his property, Amara. You never were." But Amara's stomach churned with anxiety. Hassan would be furious. He would feel betrayed, humiliated. He had paid for her and she was escaping. Her family would be devastated. The debt he had cleared, would they have to pay it back? Would they hate her forever? "Stop," Zara said gently, seeming to read her thoughts. "Stop worrying about everyone else. For once in your life, think about yourself. Think about what you want." "What do you want, Amara?" The question hung in the air. What did she want? It had been so long since anyone had asked, since she had even allowed herself to think about it. "I want to go to school," Amara said slowly. "I want to learn. I want to become a teacher. I want to choose who I marry, when I marry, if I marry. I want to make my own decisions. I want my life to be mine." "Then that's what we'll fight for," Zara said firmly. When they finally reached the city, the taxi pulled up in front of an ordinary-looking building. A woman was waiting outside, middle-aged with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Amara," she said. "I'm Mrs. Rashida. Welcome to New Beginnings. You're safe now." Amara got out of the taxi on shaking legs. She looked at the building, then back at the taxi, then at Zara. "Go on," Zara encouraged. "I'll visit you tomorrow." "And Amara?" "You're one of the bravest people I've ever met." Amara walked toward Mrs. Rashida, who put a gentle arm around her shoulders. As they walked into the building, Amara realized she was crying, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of fear, of exhaustion, and underneath it all, the smallest seed of joy. She had escaped. She had actually done it. Whatever came next, at least she had chosen it. And that made all the difference. The shelter was nothing like Amara had imagined. She had pictured something cold and institutional, but New Beginnings felt more like a large home. There were about 15 women living there, ranging from teenagers to middle-aged mothers. Each had their own story of escape from difficult situations, and each face reflected a mixture of hope and hardship. Mrs. Rashida showed Amara to a small room she would share with another girl. "This is Nadia. She's 18 and has been here for 3 months. Nadia, this is Amara." Nadia smiled shyly from where she sat on her bed, a textbook open in her lap. "Welcome. Don't worry. It gets easier after the first few days. The fear, I mean." That night, Amara lay in her new bed, staring at the ceiling of her new room in a new city, in what felt like a new life. Every sound made her jump. Every car passing outside made her wonder if it was Hassan coming to drag her back. Sleep came in fits and starts, filled with dreams of locked gates and angry voices. The next morning, reality began to sink in. Mrs. Rashida sat with her over breakfast and explained what would happen next. "We've already contacted our lawyer, Miss Fatima. She specializes in cases like yours. She'll meet with you this afternoon to start building your case. Amara, I need you to understand something important. This won't be easy. Hassan will fight back. He has money, influence, and society's traditional values on his side. But we have the law and we have the truth. You were 16 when you were married. You were forced, and that makes the marriage illegal." "What will happen to my family?" Amara asked, the guilt already eating at her. "That's not your responsibility to worry about. But Hassan may demand his bride price back, yes. The court will have to decide on that." That afternoon, Miss Fatima arrived. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, carrying a briefcase full of documents. She sat across from Amara and pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out, even if it's embarrassing or painful." For the next 2 hours, Amara talked. She told her about the debt, the announcement, the wedding she didn't want, the 6 months of isolation and control. She showed Miss Fatima the photo of her swollen cheek that Zara had taken that night. She shared her school certificate, proving she had been in 10th grade when she was pulled out for marriage. Miss Fatima took notes, asked questions, and nodded throughout. When Amara finished, the lawyer sat back. "This is a strong case. You were a minor. There was coercion. There's evidence of abuse. The challenge will be the cultural aspect. Many people will argue that this type of marriage is traditional, that you entered it willingly by saying yes at the ceremony. Hassan will claim you're a rebellious wife who abandoned your duties. But we've won cases like this before. The key is that the law is on our side." 3 days later, Hassan found out where she was. The shelter's phone rang and it was him demanding to speak to his wife. "Mrs. Rashida took the call. She's under our protection now. You cannot contact her directly." Hassan's voice was loud enough that Amara could hear it from across the room. "She belongs to me. I paid for her. You have no right to keep her there." "She's not property, Mr. Hassan, and she has every right to legal protection." He hung up. But within hours, his lawyer had filed a petition demanding Amara's return, claiming she was his legal wife who had abandoned her marital duties. The battle had officially begun. The next weeks were a blur of legal meetings, document gathering, and testimony preparation. Miss Fatima worked tirelessly, building their case piece by piece. She interviewed Zara, who testified about Amara's age and the conditions she had witnessed. She gathered evidence of Hassan's age, financial status, and the substantial bride price he had paid, which proved the coercive nature of the arrangement. But Hassan fought back hard. His lawyer argued that the marriage was conducted according to religious law and local customs, that Amara had said yes at the ceremony, that she was now 17 and should honor her commitments. He even brought witnesses who claimed Amara had seemed happy at the wedding. The worst part was when Amara's own family got involved. Her father came to the shelter one day, his face haggard with stress. "What have you done?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Hassan is demanding his money back. All of it. The moneylenders have returned. We'll lose everything." "How could you do this to us?" "How could you do this to me?" Amara countered, tears streaming down her face. "I was 16. I wanted to go to school. You sold me to an old man to solve your problems, and we had no choice. We were desperate. And I wasn't. I had dreams, Father. I had a future. You took it all away." Her father left angry, and her mother sent messages through relatives begging Amara to go back to Hassan, to save the family from ruin. Each message felt like a knife in her heart, but Zara and the shelter staff kept reminding her that she wasn't responsible for her family's choices. "They put you in this situation," Zara said firmly. "Not the other way around. You're the victim here, not them." The case drew unexpected attention. A local journalist wrote an article about it, and suddenly Amara's story was being debated on social media, in newspapers, on radio shows. Some people supported her, calling the marriage child abuse and exploitation. Others condemned her, saying she was destroying the family institution and disrespecting tradition. Amara had to testify in court, which was one of the hardest things she'd ever done. She sat in the witness box facing Hassan across the courtroom for the first time since she'd left. He stared at her with cold fury, and she felt herself shrinking under his gaze. But Miss Fatima's voice was steady and encouraging. Tell the judge what happened, Amara. Tell him the truth. So she did. She told about the debt, the forced marriage, the isolation, the abuse. She told about being pulled out of school despite being first in her class. She told about being locked in the compound, about having her phone taken, about the constant criticism and control. Her voice shook and she cried several times, but she got through it. Hassan's lawyer tried to shake her testimony, asking aggressive questions. Did anyone physically force you to say yes at the wedding? My father squeezed my shoulder. I knew what would happen if I refused. My family would lose everything. But you could have said no. You chose to say yes. I was 16. I was scared. I felt like I had no choice, but you had a choice, Miss Fatima objected. Your Honor, this line of questioning is harassment. The law is clear that minors cannot give legal consent to marriage regardless of what words they spoke under duress. The judge sustained the objection, but the damage was done. Amara left the courthouse feeling drained and defeated. What if the judge didn't believe her? What if he sided with Hassan? What if she was forced to go back? The media attention intensified. Women's rights organizations rallied outside the courthouse, holding signs demanding justice for Amara. But there were also counter-protests, people claiming she was destroying family values and traditional culture. The case had become bigger than just her story. It had become a symbol of the clash between tradition and human rights. 8 months after leaving Hassan's house, the day of the verdict finally arrived. Amara sat in the courtroom, flanked by Zara and Mrs. Rashida. Her hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Miss Fatima gave her an encouraging nod. The judge entered and everyone stood. He sat, looked at his notes, and then directly at Amara. His face was unreadable. This court has carefully considered all evidence and testimony in this case. He began. The facts are clear. The plaintiff, Amara, was 16 years old at the time of marriage. According to national law, the legal age of marriage is 18. Regardless of religious or customary practices, this marriage was illegal from its inception. Amara felt her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence shows clear coercion through financial pressure on the minor's family, as well as evidence of control and abuse during the marriage. This court finds that the marriage between Amara and Hassan is null and void. It is hereby annulled. The courtroom erupted. Amara heard nothing but ringing in her ears. Annulled. The marriage was annulled. She was free, truly free. The judge wasn't finished. Additionally, given the illegal nature of this marriage and the trauma inflicted, Hassan is ordered to pay Amara compensation and is permanently prohibited from contacting her. Her family's debt will be restructured through community assistance programs. Miss Fatima was hugging her. Zara was crying. Mrs. Rashida was smiling. And Amara just sat there stunned as the reality slowly sank in. She had won. Against all odds, against tradition, against a system that usually protected men like Hassan, she had won. The nightmare was finally truly over. The months following the court verdict were both liberating and terrifying. Amara was free from Hassan, but she had to figure out what freedom actually meant. For 18 years of her life, other people had made decisions for her. First her parents, then Hassan. Now, for the first time, she had to choose her own path. And the weight of that responsibility was overwhelming. She stayed at the New Beginnings shelter while she figured things out. Mrs. Rashida was patient, understanding that healing takes time. You've been through trauma, she explained. You don't just bounce back from something like that. Give yourself permission to heal slowly. The compensation from Hassan helped. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give her options. Miss Fatima helped her open her own bank account, the first money that was truly hers. Looking at that bank book with her name on it made her cry. Such a simple thing, but it represented independence she'd never had before. Her relationship with her family was complicated. Her father wouldn't speak to her. He felt she had brought shame on the family and his pride couldn't handle it. But her mother reached out cautiously after a few months. They met at a small cafe, an awkward meeting full of long silences and careful words. I'm sorry, her mother said finally. I should have protected you better. I should have fought harder. Why didn't you? Amara asked, not accusingly, just genuinely wanting to understand. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Because I was taught the same thing you were being taught. That daughters sacrifice for their families, that our needs come last. I lived my whole life believing that was normal. I didn't know how to save you and I couldn't even save myself. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. Her mother began visiting every few weeks, and slowly, carefully, they rebuilt something. Not the relationship they'd had before that was gone forever, but something new, built on honesty rather than obligation. Her brothers reached out too, apologetic and confused. They had benefited from her sacrifice, and the guilt weighed on them. Amara forgave them eventually. They were just kids too, caught in the same system that had crushed her. 6 months after the verdict, with support from the shelter and a small scholarship from a women's education fund, Amara enrolled in school again. She had missed nearly 2 years of education, so she had to work twice as hard to catch up. But she didn't mind. Walking into a classroom again, sitting at a desk, opening a textbook, it all felt like coming home. Her mathematics teacher, an elderly woman named Mrs. Karim, noticed her dedication immediately. "You have a passion for learning that's rare," she told Amara. "Where did you learn to love education so much?" "I learned what it's like to have it taken away," Amara replied. The other students were younger than her, and sometimes she felt out of place. They talked about normal teenage problems, about crushes and arguments with parents and what to wear to parties. Amara couldn't relate. She had lived a lifetime of experiences they couldn't imagine. But she found her own kind of peace in the routine of school life. Homework, exams, studying late at night. These were problems she could solve, challenges she could meet. She moved out of the shelter and into a small apartment with 2 other young women who had also come through the organization's programs. Nadia, her roommate from the shelter, and another girl named Ruxar, who had escaped a violent household. The 3 of them created their own little family, supporting each other through tough days and celebrating small victories. Learning to manage daily life was harder than Amara expected. Simple things like grocery shopping, paying bills, cooking just enough food for one person. Hassan had controlled every aspect of her life for so long that making even small decisions felt overwhelming at first. But with each day, each choice, she grew more confident. She got a part-time job at a bookstore which felt perfect. Surrounded by books, helping students find study materials, recommending stories to curious readers. Her boss, Mr. Ahmed, was kind and understanding. When she occasionally struggled with anxiety or had bad days triggered by memories, he gave her space without judgment. The nightmares took longer to fade. Some nights she still woke up sweating, dreaming she was back in that compound trapped behind those high walls. On those nights, she would get up, make tea, and remind herself of the truth. She was in her own apartment. She had her own key. The door locked from the inside. She could leave whenever she wanted. Nobody owned her anymore. Therapy helped. The organization connected her with a counselor who specialized in trauma. At first, Amara was skeptical. "Talking won't change what happened," she said. "No," the counselor agreed. "But it can change how much power those memories have over your future." She was right. Slowly, painfully, Amara processed everything she'd been through. The grief for her stolen adolescence. The anger at a system that had failed her. The guilt she still felt about her family's debt. The counselor helped her understand that none of it had been her fault. She had been a child, powerless against forces bigger than herself. 1 year after her escape, Amara received her exam results. She had passed everything, and once again mathematics was her highest score. She held that result sheet and thought about the 16-year-old girl who had received similar results on the day her father announced her marriage. That girl had thought her dreams were over. But here she was, still standing, still fighting, still dreaming. She applied to the teacher training college, the same one her old teacher had mentioned years ago. The scholarship she had lost back then was gone, but she applied for others. She wrote in her application essay about her journey, about losing her education and fighting to get it back, about understanding the value of learning because she knew what it felt like to be denied it. 2 months later, the acceptance letter arrived. Full scholarship. When she opened it, sitting at her small kitchen table with Nadia and Ruxar watching, she burst into tears. Happy tears this time, pure, uncomplicated joy. "I'm going to be a teacher," she whispered, clutching the letter. "I'm actually going to be a teacher." Her roommates cheered and hugged her, and they celebrated with cheap cake from the corner bakery. It was a simple celebration, but it meant everything. This was a victory that belonged entirely to her. She had earned this. Not through sacrifice or suffering, but through her own determination and hard work. Zara came to visit that evening, bringing flowers. She had been Amara's constant support through everything, visiting regularly, checking in, celebrating every milestone. When Amara showed her the acceptance letter, Zara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so proud of you," Zara said, pulling her into a tight hug. "From that terrified girl in my father's bathroom to this strong young woman. Look how far you've come." "I couldn't have done it without you," Amara said honestly. "You saved my life." "No," Zara corrected gently. "You saved your own life. I just gave you a little push in the right direction. The courage, the strength, the determination to rebuild, that was all you." On her first day at the teacher training college, Amara woke up early. She put on the simple kurta she had bought with her own money, packed her new bag with notebooks and pens, and looked at herself in the mirror. The girl looking back was 18 now, with eyes that had seen too much but hadn't lost their spark. There were still shadows there, still healing to do. But there was also hope. There was also strength. She took the bus to campus, her heart racing with excitement and nervousness. The college was beautiful, with tree-lined paths and old buildings filled with the energy of learning. Students rushed past carrying books, sitting in groups discussing assignments, laughing and living their lives. This was where she belonged. This was the world she was supposed to be part of. Her first class was Introduction to Educational Psychology. She sat in the third row, opened her notebook to a fresh page, and picked up her pen. The professor walked in, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an authoritative presence. "Welcome to all of you," she began. "You're here because you want to teach, to shape young minds, to make a difference in the world. Teaching is not just about delivering information. It's about seeing potential in students, especially those who have been told they have none. It's about creating opportunities, opening doors, and believing in people when they don't yet believe in themselves." Amara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. Around her, other students were taking notes, but she just sat there for a moment, letting it all sink in. She was here. She was actually here, in a college classroom, pursuing her dream, living a life she had chosen. A girl next to her leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" Amara smiled through her tears. "Yes, I'm perfect. I'm just really happy to be here." The girl smiled back, a little confused but friendly. "I'm Saba. I'm Amara. Nice to meet you." Simple words. A simple exchange. But for Amara, it was profound. She was making friends as an equal. She was introducing herself on her own terms. She was just Amara, a student with dreams and potential, not Hassan's wife, not a burden to her family, not a victim, just herself. As the professor continued the lecture, Amara picked up her pen and started taking notes. The words flowed onto the page. Knowledge she was choosing to learn, education she had fought for, a future she was building one day at a time. During the lunch break,